Okay, we're going to take a look now at Indigenous governance in an effort to perhaps see the contrast with Western forms of governance. I think first of all, this first statement here, governance is fully integrated into the social, religious, social, and material aspect of the culture. And in that sense, that means that within each tribal community, there was a way for everybody to participate on some level, because governance wasn't something separate. It wasn't like it was with Aristotle's time, where you have the government sitting up in a group of buildings at the center of the city, and all activity flows around them, but only that group of people participate in making the laws and doing those kinds of things, and the kind of thing we find today. We can live our lives all day, every day, and never really feel the presence of government. However, if but because of the integrity that the tribes had at the time of the arrival of the Europeans, and even into the 1800s, a tremendous amount of internal integrity, and even into the 20th century and 21st century in some communities. Governance isn't something that happens over there, but it's something that's included in the religious structure, in terms often in terms of some of the Pueblo theocracies. The religious leaders choose the civil leaders. Um, Socially and materially, all of these things connect back each individual into having a stake in the governing process on a very meaningful basis. For example, we have first example here is the Algonquin matrilineal community. The clan mothers choose which male leaders will represent the clan in the tribal council. I wrote that wrong. So basically, council meets every now and then, or there's a requirement of something comes up and there needs to be a meeting of the council. It's the women who determine which male leaders will represent the clan. And so right off the bat, you have both genders participating, even though whatever decision comes out of the meeting, um, when that person takes that back to the clan mothers to say, well, this is what we decided, and if it turns out that that guy did something that was not right, meaning he didn't represent the clan right, or he put his own personal interests above the interests of the clan or the tribe, they'll strip him of his authority, and let somebody else go next time. Have somebody else represent the tribe at the next time there's a tribal council meeting. And this is also reflected in the Iroquois Confederacy as well, where the clan mothers choose which male leaders will represent them in at the league. And if they screw up, then they get their horns taken off. They call it taking away their leadership. Another example here, more or less in the Southwest, of these Athabascan matrilineal bands, in which is a male leader who governs by consensus. And when the male leader is governing by consensus, there's times that some families don't like the decision that's made, and they were able to choose or remain they can either leave or remain with the band as decisions are made. It's very, very loose, and of course that has a lot to do with the amount of freedom that the tribes had here prior to imposition of states, and the kinds of limitations that came with the Europeans, and also the population. But but the idea here is that the leadership, while the leader is there and making decisions, the way that person is kept in check, one of the ways that person is kept in check is if everybody leaves, making bad decisions, and suddenly there's no band. Well, the bands go off and join other people, join other bands. And if that's the case, then the leader is left by themselves, and that's not that's a very strong message. And then the last one I've got here is the Pueblo civil leadership determined through the recommendation of the societies. And in this situation, a lot of times tribal leadership civil leadership, the everyday governing type leadership, is based on recommendations from the religious societies. Now, another aspect, so in terms of participation, almost everybody gets to participate on some level or another within this concept of um, of indigenous governance, especially pre-contact, but to a lesser degree even today. Now, another aspect I wanted to take a look at here is what I'd call the basic supra-tribal organization, meaning what is there larger than the tribe? Because what we see is, in Europe we have the creation of the modern state and other places around the world. And those states began to assert certain kinds of power, and that power was based in alliances and connections um, between the people. And part of it, a lot of times, maintaining the modern state requires war. That the United States, as a state, as a nation state, was divided in the middle of the 19th century with the Civil War. And it's only through force of war was the state maintained. And even today, you see countries around the world where there's fringe rebellions of people not wanting to be a part of the state. So, what was the basic supra tribal organization for indigenous people here in North America? What we see is the Confederacy, and actually, the United States is based on that Iroquois model. I won't say the Constitution is based on it, but the concept of a confederacy is very, very strong in terms of how the United States came to be. But we find out that this whole idea of confederacy extends far beyond just the Iroquois. This confederacy is throughout North America. And so we got the Iroquois Confederacy, the Mohawk, Seneca, Onondaga, Oneida, and Cayuga. We also have a confederacy called the Big Fire Confederacy, which was made up of the Chippewa, the Potawatomi, and Ottawa, excuse me, Chippewa, Potawatomi, and Ottawa. And this Big Fire Confederacy extended from eastern Lake Ontario, eastern, what we now call Ontario, into Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Western Ontario. So all around the Great Lakes area there was the Big Fire Confederacy. And then further west, right on the Canadian-American border in Alberta, right up against the Rocky Mountains, there was the Blood Confederacy made of the Piegans, the Blackfoot, and the Blood Indians. And so so we see these models of confederacy throughout. I would imagine there is a level of confederacy among all of the pueblos here in the Southwest. But what the Confederacy represents is these separate groups, these tribal groups, that they're related some ways by language, sometimes simply by their territory and language, coming together to achieve a certain end without infringing on each other's sovereignty, meaning that every tribe gets to make its own decision, except that when it comes to the Confederacy, then they get together and they make a decision for everybody. And everybody sticks with the Confederacy. And in fact, the Iroquois Confederacy held on real well up through the American Revolution until, due to starvation, the Iroquois Confederacy was broken, and the Oneidas broke away from fighting against the United States to fighting with the United States. But that was simply because of their situation. Now, this is in contrast with Western Europe, where power is created through alliance, by treaty and marriage, and sometimes simple force. And so this is one of the major areas of distinction. This and the role of citizenship and participation in government being afforded to almost everybody because of the degree that governance is embedded into the other institutions of the community.